Here's something nobody talks about. The person sitting quietly in the corner of the room, the one who seems calm, composed, maybe even a little distant, is often running 1,000 mental tabs at once. They're replaying what someone said at lunch. They're already 3 steps into a conversation that hasn't happened yet. And at midnight, when everyone else is asleep, their brain is still open for business. This is an anxiety in the way most people picture it. There's no visible panic, no obvious struggle. It's quieter than that, and in many ways, far more exhausting. Today, we're going into the psychology behind people who think too much. Not in a surface level, just relax kind of way, but at the level of brain science, behavioral patterns, and the real emotional cost that chronic overthinking carries, often completely hidden from the outside world. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why this happens, what it reveals about the people it affects, and what actually helps, because just stop thinking about it is not an answer. Let's get into it. Let's start with the brain itself, because this isn't about weakness or being too sensitive. Researchers in cognitive neuroscience have identified a specific network in the brain called the default mode network. Think of it as your brain's background program. In most people, it activates during rest, daydreaming, light reflection, casual wandering thoughts. But in chronic overthinkers, this network doesn't quietly hum in the background. It dominates. It runs loud, constant, and without a clear off switch. And it works in close collaboration with the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for analysis, planning, and self-monitoring. In overthinkers, these two systems are essentially in a permanent conversation with each other. One generates the thought, the other dissects it. Then the first one generates a response to the dissection, and around it goes. The result? A mind that never fully clocks out. Here's what makes this genuinely fascinating, and what most people completely miss. Overthinking rarely starts in adulthood. For the majority of people who experience it, the pattern was built much earlier, often in environments where things felt inconsistent or unpredictable. A home where the emotional temperature could shift without warning. A classroom where making mistakes felt genuinely dangerous. A parent whose approval felt conditional. In those environments, a young brain does something remarkably logical. It learns to prepare. If you can think 3 steps ahead, anticipate the reaction, rehearse the conversation, map out every possible outcome, maybe you can avoid the thing that hurt last time. Overthinking, in that context, isn't a disorder. It's a survival strategy that worked once. The problem is that the brain doesn't automatically retire strategies just because the environment has changed. You grow up. The situation improves. But the mental habit, the constant scanning, the endless anticipation, it stays. Not all overthinking is the same. Psychologists typically separate it into 2 distinct patterns, and understanding the difference actually matters. The first is called reflective rumination. This is the version where the person turns inward to process, understand, and make meaning. When it's balanced, this type is genuinely linked to higher emotional intelligence, stronger self-awareness, and deeper empathy. It's the thoughtful pause before the important decision, the careful consideration before the difficult conversation. The second is brooding rumination, and this is where the cost becomes real. This pattern involves dwelling on problems without any movement toward resolution. It circles. It loops. It revisits the same moment from 17 different angles and arrives back at the beginning every time. The genuinely difficult part? Most overthinkers move between both, sometimes within the same hour. A moment of honest self-reflection slides, almost without notice, into a spiral. And because the brain is active, because it feels like thinking is happening, it's incredibly hard to recognize when processing has become looping. Psychologists call this the illusion of mental productivity. The mind feels busy. It feels like progress, but it's running in place. This is the part that surprises most people. Every time your brain engages in problem solving, even imaginary problem solving, it gets a small neurochemical reward, dopamine, the same chemical involved in motivation, pleasure, and reinforcement. Here's the critical detail. The brain doesn't require you to solve the problem to release it. The act of analyzing, turning the scenario over, building mental arguments, running through possibilities, is enough. So when an overthinker lies awake running through a difficult conversation they need to have next week, their brain isn't suffering through that experience entirely. Part of it is being chemically rewarded for the activity. That's why telling someone to just stop thinking about it fails almost every time. You're asking them to voluntarily walk away from something their brain is partially enjoying on a neurological level. It's not stubbornness. It's not weakness. It's chemistry. Here's where the research gets genuinely interesting, and where the common narrative completely falls apart. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have found a consistent link between high levels of rumination and elevated cognitive empathy. People who think too much are, on average, significantly better at reading a room, at understanding how their words might land before they say them, at picking up on the emotional undercurrent of situations that others miss entirely. The same mental engine that keeps them awake at 2 a.m. is the one that makes them remarkably attuned to the people around them. They notice the shift in someone's tone. They catch the thing left unsaid. They feel the emotional weight of situations that other people move through without registering. That's not a flaw. That's perception operating at a high level. But perception without an off switch is exhausting. And that's the quiet tension that overthinkers carry, often completely invisibly, every single day. So if telling yourself to stop doesn't work, what does? The most research-supported approaches don't focus on silencing the thoughts. They focus on changing your relationship to them. One of the most effective frameworks comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. It introduces a concept called cognitive diffusion. The idea is straightforward but genuinely powerful. You are not your thoughts. You are the person observing your thoughts. When an overthinker fuses with a thought, "This could go wrong, I said the wrong thing, they probably think I'm difficult," the thought becomes reality. It has full weight, full authority. Diffusion creates distance. Instead of "This is a problem I need to solve right now," the shift becomes, "My brain is generating a concern. I can notice that without acting on it." One word of reframing, from "I am thinking this" to "I notice I'm thinking this," can interrupt the loop at its root. Another approach with strong evidence behind it is scheduled worry time. It sounds almost absurdly simple. You designate a specific 20-minute window each day, same time, same place, where you're allowed to think through your concerns. Outside of that window, when a thought arrives, you note it and redirect. "I'll think about that at 6 p.m. What this does neurologically is train the brain to recognize that the threat isn't immediate, that it doesn't need to process right now to stay safe. Over time, the urgency signal weakens. And perhaps the most underrated tool of all, physical movement. Not as a distraction, but as a genuine neurological intervention. Exercise has been consistently shown to reduce activity in the default mode network, the very system that keeps the mental engine running. Even a 20-minute walk has measurable impact on rumination levels in the hours that follow. The goal isn't an empty mind. It's a mind that knows when to work and when to rest. Here's what psychology keeps returning to, and what I think matters most. Overthinking is not evidence of something broken inside a person. It is evidence of a highly active, highly perceptive mind that learned, often very young, that staying alert was the safest option. That thinking ahead meant staying protected. That preparation was survival. The challenge for the adult overthinker isn't to become someone who thinks less. It's to gradually teach that same intelligent, vigilant mind that the threat level has changed. That the environment that originally required constant scanning is no longer the one they're living in. And that, slowly, with patience, it is safe to let the thoughts settle. Because the most powerful thing an overthinker can learn isn't how to stop their mind. It's how to trust it enough to finally give it rest. If any part of this felt familiar, if you recognized yourself or someone you care about in what we covered today, share this video with them. Sometimes the most useful thing isn't advice. It's just feeling understood. If you want to go deeper, our next video covers the psychology of highly sensitive people, and why emotional depth is far more of a strength than the world typically gives it credit for. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And I'll see you in the next one.